Good morning and welcome to the Cardinal HR Reporting and Queries Forum for Agencies and Decentralized Localities. My name is Jolene Christensen and I'm your facilitator here this morning. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us and learn so much more about reporting and queries here in Cardinal. We'll start with Natalie Brannon. DHRM has joined us yet again, and she's going to review the key, some key to accurate HR data. We'll also review the reports catalog. We'll go through some HR queries first, where we'll talk about how to run and also some of our favorite queries. We'll also talk about some specific HR reports. Then we'll dig in a little deeper and talk to you about some Excel tips and tricks, specifically about merging queries or merging report output if you have that in a CSV file or an Excel file. Finally, we'll go to QA and additional support. So now I'm going to hand it over to Natalie. Thank you for joining us today, and go to the next slide.
First, welcome everyone. Thank you for having me. I think this is a really timely presentation. It's really hard to believe that we are actually almost, not quite, at the 1-year mark since the actual full implementation of Cardinal. So although it seems like we've been in this system and navigating for quite a while, for many agencies, they're still in the learning process. And so we understand that. But now that everybody's kind of been in and gotten their feet wet a little bit, I think it's a great time to really look at the data that we have in the system. And hopefully today will help everyone really work through the information and make sure that our HR system of record is as accurate as possible. So one, Cardinal truly is the Commonwealth system of record for personnel records, personnel HR information. And so it is really critical that the data is as accurate and accurately reflects the information for our employee population. This data is used to generate reports and metrics across all of our secretariats for all of our agencies. And so it impacts so many downstream processes, benefits, payroll, time and attendance. And now, unlike PMIS, the Cardinal data actually more directly impacts some of our finance processes too for agencies. So HR information has always been critical, but it's even more impactful that some things that maybe would have been seen as minor errors can now have a much greater impact on agencies being able to support their mission. So we want to make sure that we get things taken care of. The information is extracted from Cardinal and interfaces with a lot of our agency-specific systems, our third-party vendors like VRS, our Anthem benefits, systems. So efficiency is key to making sure that this data supports those downstream systems. For compliance purposes, DHRM is mandated to provide a variety of HR reports to all the secretariats, to the governor's office, and it's especially critical for FOIA requests where we're providing this information out to public entities, and we're reporting it based on the way that the data is reflected in the Cardinal system. Another difference within the Cardinal system from our previous PMIS process is that employees have self-service now, and so they're viewing their own HR information, and we want to make sure that one, that this data is accurate for them, and that they're building trust with their agency, that they know that the agency has taken care of them and that their employee information is appropriate. So with that, really just want to talk about a little bit more about kind of just the accuracy. As I spoke to, there are quite a number of downstream systems. We have upgraded the learning management system, Page Up with the recruitment management system, even our statewide employee directory to really have integration files with the Cardinal system. So a lot of times we're seeing feedback and input from agencies around challenges with that system and with data. And really the source of the challenge may be the information and how it's set up with Cardinal. Again, we're just 1 year in, and it took a Herculean effort for agencies to get all of their information into the system. And so, you know, with any effort as significant as what we've just experienced over the past year, we fully expected that really over the next year or so that it would take some time to do a little bit of cleanup and make sure that everything really aligns appropriately. So I don't know if agencies are aware of those connectivities to the data that's in Cardinal as the source for how those processes function downstream. So just wanted to make sure that I touched on that so that everyone's aware of why it's so critical that we go through kind of the next steps of making sure that we spend a little bit of time cleaning up. I know that everyone's very busy and it takes a lot to get this information in. And it's going to take a lot of time to go back and audit, and a lot of times you can't catch the information until you're actually generating reports or using the information. And we're just getting through the first cycle of doing that. So just be mindful as you're going through some of these processes and you're running reports for your own agency. Whenever you see something, if you could kind of flag it and take a moment to try to make corrections almost real time, because this data then refreshes real time to all these downstream tools that I've just spoke to. I know just within my role that that some statewide reports, we've received feedback from agencies that they're experiencing a lot of challenges with trying to use some of the new tools that are in the Cardinal system and generating the reports. So I highlighted the compensation level by job and SOC code report just as one of those, because I think I get a question from an agency weekly around leveraging that report, especially now as agencies are going into the budget cycle and starting to look at this data, looking at alignment within their agencies, and also in making job offers. And oftentimes we're noting that that report isn't fully accurate in showing kind of especially around the median and quartile results. But the reason why is because an individual role from an individual agency, if there's an error somewhere, then it's going to be reflected in some of those more aggregate data reports that are being provided as tools to support agencies. So we want to make sure that all agencies have the most effective, appropriate tools that they can leverage for their systems. So I think I just want to kind of fast forward a little bit because I think we've kind of talked to this. Just kind of another nuance is that a lot of our systems with single sign-on processing, they're also using employee data for authentication, for system access. So just be mindful that, you know, if somebody can't get into a system, this might be one of those touch points to evaluate as they're troubleshooting some of these issues. So as we are looking at validating the data, and I know we're going to speak to that in more detail, so thank you, Cardinal team, for helping educate us all on the best approach to audit and validate the information. It's essential that we use the queries and the reporting tools so that we're leveraging the system to make the most efficient use of the system. And so if you look at that, we have the Cardinal Reports catalog. Cardinal's done a great job, and we appreciate that. Initially, that reports catalog was almost like reading Shakespeare because it was a pretty long catalog of information. It's now been broken up into multiple sections, so hopefully it's easier to use. So if somebody bookmarked that initial Cardinal catalog, then they're going to want to refresh those links, because now the catalog is set up so that if you're looking for just HR information, it's there. There's also a separate one for the time and attendance information, a separate one catalog for the payroll data, so that agencies can get right to the information that they need. And then also you just want to be mindful that if there's a report or a query that you don't see in one catalog, it may be because the data that you need is really in one of the other catalogs. So it gives you equal access to kind of scroll through, look at a sample of what information is available, and hopefully that's beneficial so that people can more quickly audit. And as you get more comfortable with audits, you'll know like exactly which section to go view. So I think that that's going to be very helpful. I know that we quickly went through a lot of job aids and a lot of web-based training when we did each of the phases of implementation to quickly get people trained. Those tools and resources are still linked on the Cardinal website. And so hopefully, if you're like me, it's beneficial to go back and take a second listen now that you have more experience with the system. But hopefully those tools will continue to help support agencies as they go back, as they've had turnover with their teams, in navigating the tools that we've made available so that audits can be done more easily. And then, of course, it is a little bit different. We did not actually have reporting capability out of PMIS. We had Herman, which was data that DHRM had to push and kind of on the back end help agencies to get access to their information. Now they have more direct real-time access to that data through the reports and queries, but it can be a little challenging in learning how to generate those reports and navigate through to get the information that they need. So, you know, going back and looking at those tutorials, for me, I have to listen a lot. So being able to like rewind it back and listen several times to practice through may be beneficial. So just want to know that those are all tools and resources that are still there and probably even more critical at this point as we really focus on really the data cleanup side of leveraging Cardinal. With that, I want to turn it over so that Sam can walk us through kind of what these tools really look like and how to best leverage them for auditing and correcting some of the information that we're now seeing.
All right, so I may repeat myself, so I apologize in advance, but we're going to pick up where Natalie left off and go over the reports catalog. So as Natalie was explaining, we have a comprehensive overview of the reports and queries that are within the Cardinal system. And the catalog is your resource for this. The reports are broken down by functional area, but as you know, if a report or query has data that may be used across functional areas, that report you're looking for may not necessarily be in the HR catalog. It may be in the benefits catalog or the payroll catalog, etc. Most of you guys probably are familiar with the Cardinal Project website, but if you are not, that is where your reports catalog is located. And the second sentence gives you the navigation for accessing the reports catalog. It is a good idea to bookmark that link or actually bookmark the Cardinal Project website, because that is where all your resources are going to live. And as we're going through and making enhancements to the system, we're constantly adding more information on that website for you guys to use. So please bookmark that if you have not already. With the reports catalog being extensive, and as you're getting familiar with it, we do encourage you to utilize the Control F feature that's on your keyboard to find or to search by keywords. Not all keywords are obviously going to be in the reports catalog, but at a high level, you can start with maybe the name of the page or the area of where you would find the data. Like if you're looking for something specific to job, you might want to type in job. If you're looking for something specific to a position, you might want to type in position, and that'll take you to the different reports and queries that that are for those specific areas. If you are new to Cardinal and you're not familiar with running a report or query, we do have some resources that are listed below. The first two are job aids. The last one is an actual video, a WBT, that you can watch depending on your learning type, right? You can watch that just to get a high level overview of how to run a report query. There are some small nuances that are specific to each report and query. So it doesn't drill down to give you specific information, but it does give you the high level overview of how that functionality works. And now we're going to actually take a look at the reports catalog. So like I said, the Cardinal Project website is going to be your main resource as you work for the state or your specific agency. And you want to bookmark this specific resource. I already have it bookmarked, but if you're not familiar with bookmarking, at least in Google Chrome, what you want to do is navigate to the website, and you see this little blue star here. It won't be blue initially, but you can right click on it. I'm sorry, left click on it, and it will give you the name. It'll generate a name for you, and you can select the specific folder you want to put it in. You can change this name. So let's make this Cardinal Project website. And this will help you easily access your resources as you're navigating or going through working day to day. Okay. All right. So from the Cardinal Project website, to access the reports catalog, you're going to go to resources. And in the dropdown of resources, you will see reports catalog. This is where all the catalogs live. And if you scroll down, you'll see all of the catalogs that are available to you. We have accounts payable, receivable reports, benefits, payroll, Cardinal reports catalog, security, etc. We're going to click on the HR reports catalog because that's what we are going to utilize today. And when you select that specific catalog, it opens up in another tab in your browser. As you can see, we can go back to the Cardinal Project website on this tab, go back to the reports catalog. And in this reports catalog, you open up to the intro page or the cover page. You see when it was last revised. And then the next page or couple of pages are the table of contents. You'll see that the reports catalog is broken into sections. We have the queries at the top and the reports underneath. And the title of each specific query or report, along with a page number of where that information starts within the reports catalog. Again, if you are not familiar with Control F, you would simply select both those keys on your keyboard, and that will pop up a search bar at the top right corner of your screen. And you can use this to search for specific keywords. So let's try this out. If I select job or type in job, I see I have 84 different references of job within this reports catalog. So if I want to narrow down the search a little bit more, I might want to add some more keywords. And when I add job data, I see we have filtered down to 8 different references, which is a little bit more manageable. And if I want to review all these references of job data, I can use these arrows to navigate through this catalog. Obviously, it's going to start with the first reference, which is a query, and that's the job data query. And then the next one goes into a specific query that's used for compensation frequency. If the job data query is the one that you want to review or look over, all you need to do is select the title. When you click on that, it's going to jump you right to the page where this information lies, which is page 18. So you don't have to scroll. You can also use the functionality at the top, but for purposes of this demonstration, I'll just click on the title. And as you can see, I'm on page 18, where the job data query starts. So in this section, we see we have the name of the query. We have the specific title of the query that you're going to use when you search for this query. We have when it was last revised, a description. This query provides job and employee demographic details by action and action reason over a period of time. We have the navigation. This is where this query lies within the Cardinal system, with the actual name of the query that you'll use to search once you land on the query viewer page. We have information about specific search criteria. These are your search parameters that you are going to enter to filter the data. The more information you enter in these fields, the narrower your search will be, and the less information you enter in the fields, the more wide open your search will be. Okay, so if you want to pull back all of your data, you're going to want to make it as wide open as possible. Your search as wide open as possible. For this query, the as of date is a required field, but the rest of these fields are not required. You can leave them blank, or you can use them if you need to. We have information about how this query generates output, right? You can get it online in an HTML format, or you can have it download into an Excel spreadsheet. And then we have a screenshot of the results. So I'm going to blow this up a little bit so you can see that. But when you're looking for reports and queries, you can actually take a look at the screenshots. Some of the data is masked, but you can look and see what information you're going to pull back from this query. And that will help you identify what information or what queries or reports you need to run when you're looking for specific information. This query is pretty long, which is indicated by the torn sheet. That tells you that there's more information, or we couldn't get the entire output on one screenshot. So you may have to scroll down to get the rest of the information. Okay. All right. So with that, I think that is about all that I need. I think this is a good time to pause and see if we have any questions that we can address about the reports catalog before we move on. Any questions that we might want to? Okay, perfect. All right, so let's go ahead back to our slideshow. All right, the next topic we're going to go over is queries. We're going to drill down into queries and go over some tips and tricks to help you as you're using Cardinal or getting comfortable with Cardinal. Oops. Okay, so saving favorite queries. By now, if you've been using Cardinal, hopefully you have saved some queries that you run regularly. But if you're not familiar, Cardinal does have this feature that is available to you. It's also available in the navigation when you're navigating through Cardinal. Hopefully by now you've added some favorite pages to your navigation or your favorite section. But we also have a favorite section for specifically for the query viewer. To add a query to your favorites, we're not going to show this in Cardinal because it's pretty self-explanatory, but you'll navigate to the exact page, which will be the query viewer page, which is displayed in the screenshot below. You'll search for that specific query by name or a portion of the name, as you see highlighted in the search by section. And then you'll click on the Add to Favorites hyperlink. That favorites hyperlink is over on the right-hand side. If you don't see it on your screen when you're in the query viewer page, you might want to scroll over to the right-hand side a little bit more. Sometimes, depending on the size of your screen, it might not fit fully on the page. Once you click on that favorite hyperlink, it's going to add that specific query name or that query to your My Favorites query section. If you don't see this displayed on your query viewer page, that's because you haven't added anything to your favorites. But once you do add a query to your favorites, you will see it every time you navigate to the page. If you need to add another query to your favorites, you'll simply, when you navigate to the query viewer, you'll just search again for your query that you're requesting, and you'll see the results come up in the query section, and then you'll select favorite, the favorite hyperlink to add it below in your My Favorite section. All right. I'll pause right here to see if there's any questions about queries.
What is the difference between a query and reports?
So the question was, what's the difference between a query and a report?
Very good question. So both of them provide real-time data based on the search parameters that you provided. Okay, it's bringing back the data that's within Cardinal. The biggest difference between reports and queries that I can think of is that a report usually is generated in a PDF format and it's can't be manipulated, but the query is like a data dump into an Excel spreadsheet that you can use to generate your own reports or, you know, aggregate the data as you need it for your agency. And if anybody wants to add any information onto that.
Oftentimes reports join several tables on the back end because of the complexity of those joins. They're required to be in a report versus a more simple output like a query. So that's also one of the driving factors. Finally, some of these reports are delivered functionality from the system, and so there might be a reason of why we have something in a report versus a query. Ideally, out of most reports, you can put it in some type of Excel or CSV format, so it acts essentially just like query output, and you can then manipulate it, filter it, and do some other things that'll allow you to massage and analyze the data further. Anything else? All right, looks like we have a question. Do wage employees appear on queries?
Yes, they do. That's a great question. Again, it depends on the information that you add in the search criteria. If you select only salaried employees for, let's say, this job data query, it's only going to pull back salaried employee information. Also, to piggyback off of the beginning of this forum, if the information in Cardinal is not accurate, it's not going to pull back the accurate information. So that's why we want to make sure that what we're putting in is the data matches how it's supposed to look for the type of employee that you have. And then you also need to understand how to utilize these reports and queries to make sure that you are getting the data that you're looking for, right? One thing I will suggest, if you run a report or query and you don't, the information is not as expected, try running it again, changing some of the search parameters. Because sometimes it may be something simple as the effective date or the as of date is after the effective date, so that information is not being pulled, or before the effective date, I should say, so that information is not being pulled. Or maybe you accidentally or inadvertently selected a certain parameter that obviously would not pull back that specific type of employee.
Our next question is, can a person or end user, HR admin, create a query? And the answer is no, you cannot. The tables are so complex, it would really take a lot of learning to be able to understand how to join those. What we're going to show you here today is how to combine several queries together, not to steal the show later on. But also, if you find yourself in a position where you're just not able to get the information you need to by cobbling together several outputs from queries, there's always an opportunity to submit a BCCC ticket to request that. I will let you know that there is a backlog of these enhancements that we'd love to make to the system, and it takes time and assessment of what we have already, because we don't want hundreds and hundreds of queries and reports, because that just is more complex to get through. And sometimes queries, we can't join them together. There's just no logical way that we're able to join certain information together based on the data that we have. Then let me see if we have any more questions. Can reports and queries be scheduled to run on a recurring basis with dynamic date parameters?
That's a great question, and we're going to get to that a little bit later in the presentation. So hold off on that question, and hopefully you will get that answer when we get to that slide.
All right. Last question, and then we're going to let Sam move on. Is there any way you can add name of employee in the position queries / reports that would save so much time, as we have to run multiple reports / queries to get the information that we need?
The employee name lives on the personal data tables, and the position information lives on the position tables. That is an outer join that is very challenging and would slow down the performance of the system if we attempted to join that in a query. We do have some reports that provide both position information and personal information that we can, focus in on. Or, if you look at your reports catalog and scroll through your reports catalog and look at the headers of some of the reports, the first column where that indicates the return to data, you may very well find a report that provides both position and personal information. If you have a report that you really like and you think we should add name or personal information to that report, submit that request as an enhancement, and we will take a look at that and may be able to add that in the future. But combining the personal information with the position information in a query fashion is just not feasible.
But hopefully, with what you're going to show on how to combine multiple queries, we're going to address that need as
Mhm.
we go through the rest of this presentation.
Correct. Yep, we're going to show you some tips and tricks on Excel usage that would take merging two queries into one, a pretty simple exercise once you gain that skill.
All right, great questions. And now we are going to transition into our next topic, which is scheduling a query. So this is a newer feature to Cardinal that is used for running queries that have previously timed out before it was completed. And usually this happens because you have a large volume of data that is being requested, and it slows down the performance of that query. In Cardinal, you should have seen the change to the navigation if you go to the query viewer often, unless you use your favorites. But the scheduled queries is a separate page or section within the reporting tools section that allows you to utilize this function. We're going to look at this in the system, but at a high level, you can select the run date and time. So you can schedule that query to run. That way you can come back and pick up your report when it's done or when you need it. You also can select the type, the type value to define how you want the report delivered. For example, it could be delivered on the website where you're probably used to going and picking up reports or queries. Or you can have it actually sent in an email format to your specific email address. And that way, when you log in the next morning, you can see your report is done and it has generated and sent you an email. You also can select the file type, right? How you want the report to be generated or formatted. For example, it can either be a PDF format or a Excel spreadsheet. And then once the report finishes running, you'll know that by seeing a success value in the run status and a posted value in the distribution status. But again, if you select email as the type of delivery, you'll actually see an email sent to your email address. Now, one thing to note, this specific functionality is not for scheduling a query to run on a reoccurring basis, but you can schedule the query ahead of time, a couple days out for it to run, and then when you have or are expecting it to be done, you can go back and look for that report and grab it and do what you need to do with it. There is a section within the running an HCM query job aid that covers the step-by-step how-to schedule a query. I'm going to go over that real quick with you guys in the system because it is kind of new. So let me go ahead and end my slideshow. And we are going to log into Cardinal. So this is our stage environment. So you won't see well, the data is live, but we'll have some masked information in here so you guys can see what this looks like. Okay. All right. So from your navigation, you'll open up your nav bar, select menu, and at the very bottom of your menu, you'll see the reporting tools section. You'll go ahead and click on that tile. And then from reporting tools, you should see query, select that. And then you'll see query viewer. You guys should see query viewer and then schedule queries. The section that we want is the scheduled query, so I'll go ahead and select that. The very first time you run a scheduled query, just like with any report in the system, you have to create a run control ID. So if you haven't scheduled a query, you're going to go ahead and select Add a New Value tab to create your run control ID. The same rules apply for all run control IDs within the Cardinal system. You can use a mixed case of letters, but you cannot have spaces or special characters. When you select a run control ID, you want to make it descriptive and specific to the report that you're trying to run. So in this section, I'm going to select an ID of position data. And then I'll add this run control ID to my username. And at the top, you'll see the run ID that you created. From here, you are going to select a couple search parameters. So first, we're going to select the query name that we're going to run. Since we're running position data, I'm going to type in the actual query name. Again, as a reminder, you can get this specific name from the reports catalog. So if you don't know it off the top of your head, you can grab that. But also, what I'll do is show you this feature. You can search for a query name. So by clicking on the search button, I should pull back the queries that I have access to. And I can search by the beginning of the name. And I can look, I have 39 queries that I pulled back, so I can navigate through to find the specific query that I'm looking for. You know, I'm looking for position data, so I want to select that. And once I select the query, I get some more questions, some more search parameters that I need to enter. Again, you'll fill this out to filter or drill down into the report as needed, but the less information you add, the more wide open the report will be. You'll add your business unit, especially if you are a parent agency and you have access to multiple business units. You want to make sure you select the business unit you're running this for. And then again, any other information that you see fit. Once you're done, you'll select OK. And you'll see your values have populated on the screen. And when I'm ready to run the report, I'll select the Run button at the top right corner. From this process scheduler page, this is where I can select the type, the delivery type, as well as the format, how I want this to be delivered. Okay. And for this report, I'm going to actually select the XLS format. Then once you've finished adding your values, you'll select OK. You'll see a process instance number appear. If you're scheduling multiple reports to run, I'm sorry, let me back up. Before we do that, I'm actually going to redo this, run this report, because I forgot to schedule, which is the purpose of this. So from the process scheduler, you're actually going to add the date, right, that you want the report to run. So let's say if we wanted to run this specific report in a week, From now, we'll select that date, and you can give it a time. Maybe we want this to run at 7 in the morning before we get to work. So it's ready for us when we get to work, and we can just pick that up and do what we need to do with the report. And then you can select the type and format that you want the report to appear. Again, you'll make note of your process instance, because if you're running multiple reports or scheduling multiple reports, this is going to be your unique identifier for which report is which. But you'll also, from the process monitor, will see some more information, like the time that you scheduled it, the status, etc. Okay. This is my scheduled report for next week. It is in a queued state, right? Because we are not at this date yet. But this is the initial report that I ran. As you can see, it's run to success and posted. And if I want to access this report, I can go to the actions dropdown, go to view log trace, and I see my report is right here, VHR position data, or I'm sorry, query, it's right here. And it's in the Excel format. I'm not going to open up this report, but I do encourage you, if you have not run scheduled a query yet, go ahead out there and schedule a query when you get a chance, so you can see how that functions. All right, I think this is a great place to pause to see if we have any questions about scheduling queries.
We do not. We did get a question about why people would schedule queries, and I'd love for Kelly to respond, just so everybody knows. Not everybody needs to schedule a query, right, Kelly?
No, not everybody would need to use schedule query. Larger agencies that have a lot of employees and a lot of data in the database under their business unit may struggle with getting some larger queries like the job data query and the position data query to return their information. Queries are meant to pull in data quickly, deliver it back to the user quickly, and sometimes the performance, if the system has to go and collect a lot of data and it's not getting the data back over to the results quickly enough, the query will time out. And running it through the schedule query requires you to set a run control and process that query data through the system in a different manner that will not time out. So that was loaded up and opened up for agencies to use because of some issues with large queries that we have built and provided to you.
Now, there's been a couple of questions about recurring queries. We do not allow you to schedule recurring queries at this time, nor do I foresee that coming anytime in the future. But essentially, with what Sam just showed you, you could schedule something to be delivered, and then you have to go and update it for the next time. That allows us to control the performance of the system a little bit better, rather than having tons of queries out there running each week that nobody's actually looking for the output on. Back to you, Sam.
All right. Okay, so one quick thing I want to show you. Once you've added your run control ID, you will see a list. Let me show you. Let me add a new value. Let's see. Say I'm looking for job data. And let's save this. Oops. I search for the job data query. Not going to run it, but I just want to show you real quick how the run control works. Once I save this new run control, ID. When I go back to the scheduled query section and I go, if I go to find an existing value and I click on the search, I'll see my run control IDs. I think that's important for me to demonstrate so you can understand how these run control IDs should be specific and descriptive. So you'll understand you can use the position data run control ID every time you're trying to pull position information. You can use the job data ID every time you're trying to pull job information. And if I click on the position ID, I'll see the last run information that I added into the system. So if I want to change this, I can just change my values and rerun the query. Okay. All right. Let's jump back into the deck. Grab this. Oops. 1 second. All right. So the next slide that I'm actually going to hand off to Kelly Bonner to go over with you is a mismatch data cheat sheet. So I encourage all of you guys, as you're getting comfortable with the system, to probably print this out and keep it handy as you're entering data into the system. But and that's all I'm going to say about this. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Kelly so she can go through with you guys on what this is used for.
Thanks, Sam. So this spreadsheet was created specifically for this forum. And as we've, been working on the forum, gotten a lot of comments back from folks helping work on this forum. It takes a lot of work to build these forums out. And a lot of folks have said, we really like this. Maybe we should make this into a job aid. What this is basically the key fields in Cardinal that you need to use this spreadsheet as kind of a crosswalk to ensure when you're reviewing and validating data in Cardinal that you are matching certain key fields in Cardinal correctly. For instance, everyone should not know by now what VPA stands for. VPA stands for the Virginia Personnel Act. And our classified employees and our valors, they fall under the Virginia Personnel Act. We use this field, this VPA field, for a lot of criteria in reporting. So, and it has become a key field for us. What this spreadsheet does is it breaks out, if you notice, there's 2 sections to the spreadsheet. The first spreadsheet is your position data fields, and then the second section is your job data fields. So your VPA field, lives in your managed position and position data. And as is, of course, your job code, which is also a key field. We already have a job aid out there that's live on the Cardinal Project site that is the employee class job aid. And this is really an expansion of that. And it focuses on the job code, job family categories over here on the far left. And if you'll notice, like for instance, all of these job codes with a W in front, those are only used to be used for hourly employees. Whereas the job codes that, start with a number are salaried. So, if you look at this, this will help you if you're creating positions or you're analyzing your position data. This section will help you in ensuring that you have these fields in position correctly aligned. When you don't, that's where we get into a lot of reporting issues. And then in order to expand upon that, we are sharing with you some fields on job data that need to align with the type of position. So if you're dealing with a position that is a salaried position, say you're dealing with a classified position, you should be in the, the job family of the 19,000 through 79,000 job code area criteria. And, you should have an employee class that matches a salaried position, right? And you should have the employee type as salaried, and the pay group should also be a salaried, start with an S. All salaried jobs that are in a salaried pay group, the pay group starts with an S. So you should, be analyzing your data and ensuring that your data is properly aligned across the position, the job. And then when you hire these employees into these jobs, you want to make sure that the employee is in fact hired into an accurate position and that their job data accurately defines the type of employee that they are. So this spreadsheet was built essentially to help you with that. And we sent this PowerPoint out early so that you could have this cheat sheet in front of you for the next section of the forum that we're going to be going through, because we're going to run a query and we're going to help you filter and identify some mismatched data in the system. But mismatched data in the system that you would be looking for when you review and audit your data in Cardinal to ensure that your data is accurate. Okay, and this is just one of several fields that you would need to be looking at.
All right. Thank you, Kelly.
Just a couple of questions while we're transitioning over to the next item. We've had a couple of questions come in about run controls. Can you delete a run control once it's created? The answer is no, you cannot. And then another person asked, can you create too many? Yeah, you absolutely can, and they stick around forever. So we recommend you come up with a plan. And does the HR team have an idea of how somebody might create a run control, like the best process? Do you do it by query or by report or by functional area? What's your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I've never really thought about it like that. I guess I would, create run controls specific to the type of report or query that I'm running, that I might run on a recurring basis, that I'm looking for the same type of data. And then I would come back to that same run control, because I know that's already got the filters that I want as part of that run control, right? So if I'm, running a job data query specifically to analyze data, and I only want to look at active employees, I might set up a run control that has that set up, for only the active employees and not the inactive employees. Whereas if I'm wanting to look at my turnover, I want to look at inactive employees, so I might set that run control up a little differently. If I'm using, that mechanism in order to run my queries.
Thank you. Back to you, Sam.
Right. So our next slide is when we're going to start our demo. And that is running the job data query and identifying inaccurate data. So we are going to go in the system and show you how to run this query. And then I'm not going to take the report that I generated I'm actually going to use a stage report that we have scrubbed and made sure that it was ready for this particular forum. All right, so let's go ahead back to the home section. And I'm actually going to go back to my main menu, just so I can show you the full navigation. For the query, it's same area as where the schedule query lives, but again, we're going back into that reporting tools section. We're going into query again, and now we want to grab the query viewer tile. So I'll click on that. And from this section, you'll see I have some saved queries in my favorites. But if I wanted to look for another query that's not there, I can just type in a portion of the query name or the whole name itself and select search. And I will see all the queries that I have access to with that beginning name. For HR queries, generally, they all start with V_HR. Benefits queries start with V_BN, etc. That's how the queries naming convention goes within the Cardinal system. All right, so for this specific query, I'm going to locate the job data query. So I'm going to actually add job to help me out. And I see I have a few job queries. The one I want is the VHR job query. And I am going to select how I want to run the report. I can run it directly to Excel, or I can run it to HTML and download to Excel. Depends on what you prefer. So I'm going to select Excel hyperlink, and a new tab opens up. You should see this new tab open up. If I wanted to go back and select another query, I could, but for this demo, I'm going to go ahead and fill out this information. Start with the as of date. So as of today, I want all the information for this specific business unit. Okay. And I want to run it for all departments, all actions and reasons, whether they're VPA or not, whether they're salaried or wage, for all job codes, all SOP codes, and I want active and terminated employees. When I'm ready to run the report, I'll select View Results. And at the very top of your screen, you'll see that Cardinal is thinking and doing what it needs to do. It's fetching the information. And when it's done, you should see the arrow light up blue if you're using Google Chrome. And you'll see the download in your section. You can also go directly to your file manager and access it there. Again, we're not going to use that file. I already have a previously generated file. So I'm going to go grab that and open it up. And in this section, you'll see that about the positions for the business unit. So when you specifically, or when you get a report, if you're not familiar with Excel, you may want to filter the report so you can work with the data in a little bit more condensed way, a little bit easier way to review. To filter the first row, the header row, you'll select the filter button. Mine is already filtered, but I just want to show you that for those who are not really familiar with Excel, because I have had that question, and that will help you to pull up the information that you need and filter as you're reviewing your data. So with that being said, I'm going to drive, but I'm going to let Kelly go over this specific query with you guys, the query results, to go over how you would use this to locate mismatching data and analyzing your data.
Yeah, so as I spoke a few minutes ago about that mismatch cheat sheet, you can find a lot of, you can analyze a lot of your HR data by using the job data query. We've added about as much as we can add to this query without causing it to time out for just about everybody. So it gives us, as much detail as we can possibly, combine. But you can take a look at fields like the VPA field. You can scroll over to VPA and click on that field. And you click that drop down on that field. There's only two options for VPA. It's either yes or no. Either you're in a VPA position or you're not, okay? So what you want to do is, take a look at your VPA yeses. And, okay, so I want to make sure that everybody that's a VPA yes is in a salaried job code. So let's go over to the job codes and let's click the filter button. And now let's just search for a W because there should not be a W in any VPA job code. Oh, look at that. We have W's. Uh-oh. Click on that and you get to see exactly what data set you've got here that is just these errors. And then let's look and see now, are these in the wrong job code or are they are they in the right job code, but somebody selected VPA for a wage position? So let's scroll over and take a look at these at the pay group. Pay group, right, is something that you have to manually enter on job. And we do sometimes see mismatches here. And it looks like we have a mismatch. We have somebody that is indicated in an employee class of wage in a pay group that is salaried, but is in an hourly employee type. And then if you scroll over, you know that they are indicated as a VPA yes and in a wage job code. So all of these are data that you would highlight and go in and do a little research, whether it requires you to whip out the personnel file and see exactly what they are. More than likely, your payroll office has already called you about this mismatch because we do have a mismatch of employee type and salary type or pay type. So this is, one way that you would filter in and find, mismatched data that needs to be corrected. And, another way is you could click on, go ahead and open that up right there. Thank you. Make them all open up. You could look at employee class. So
There we go.
So this agency has, two employee classes. Some agencies use a lot more employee classes than that. But most every agency should have an employee class of agency head, and we see that that is missing. Interesting. So Natalie, what is different about the agency head positions that we should be drilling into here?
So most agency head positions are appointed positions. They are considered at will, appointed by the governor's office or the administration. So those are unique roles. They are not classified positions most often. And so we do want to make sure that we do identify who the agency head is. There actually is a report that's run for the governor's office that includes all of these positions every month. So we actually have had some challenges on occasion where we can't identify that role in Cardinal because the position hasn't been clearly identified and notated correctly in the system.
Yeah, so when we developed the Cardinal tables, we developed the agency heads to be in a job code that represents the agency number. So if we need to drill into what's going on with this agency head in this agency, where their data is mismatched, we can go, instead of going into the employee class field, let's go over and look at that job code field again. So this is agency 136. So enter 136 as a search. Oh, there we go. Click that. So that is an accurate job code for the agency head, 00136, for this particular agency. And the salary plan indicates AH, which is the agency head's salary plan, built out that way on the job code table. You notice the grade says 136. We just there to help instructor to find and ensure that their agency heads are set up properly. So the issue with this particular agency head isn't the VPA, because the VPA should be no, so that is right. It must be just that the employee class is inaccurate. The employee class for an agency head should be agency head. So that would be an area where we would definitely want to go into Cardinal and correct the employee class on the job data, which is where employee class lives for that particular employee. Anything else that you guys think we should filter on and search on? I think that's a good, gives you a good review of how to analyze, how to filter, how to use a job data query. You could do the same using position data. You may want to, check your position data and make sure, like, for instance, all of your classified employees do have an SOC code, because that's an email that you're going to be getting soon, that all classified employees should have an SOC code. So you could do that by using the position data query and drilling in on, those employees that are in those occupational families of classified, and ensure that, you have all the data filled out on the position accurately.
All right. Anything else, Kelly?
No, I think that is a good overview of kind of how to analyze and audit your data using a query.
Okay. A few things I'm going to point out. Excel is a Microsoft product, and it has very good documentation and tutorials on how to use these spreadsheets. So if you need to figure out how to take off a filter, you can look that up, right? You can select clear. Also, sometimes when these spreadsheets generate, they're very large, and you might want to format the information so it's a little bit more readable. You can select the whole data set and select the format dropdown. And we can change the size of the columns to be an auto fit size. And that kind of pulls our information together a little tightly so we can see it better. Okay. You can also hide columns and rows by selecting them and clicking on the hide. And if you want to see it again, you can also unhide. Okay. Same thing with rows. What else can I tell you? There's a lot of tools up here in the toolbar. Obviously, I don't know everything. And I don't know if there's anybody that does know all these tools and how they function, but I encourage you to do a Google search to help you as you get comfortable with using the spreadsheets. All right. Enough of that. We're going to jump back into our presentation. All right. So next up, we have identified some key resources for you. Some of the commonly tickets that we get or issues that we get deal with missing or pending email addresses. And we do have a resource in Cardinal. It's a specific query that can be leveraged to ensure that all your employees or to monitor any of your employees that may be missing an email address or have that generic pending email address that is used until an employee receives their business email or provides a personal email. So in this slide, we have some key information, but email addresses are how an employee accesses Cardinal. So if that is not correct, then they won't be able to access Cardinal. Okay. Also, as an employee moves around in state government, their email address needs to be changed depending on the role that they may take on in the next agency, and if they have access to ESS. The email address drives security, okay, for the employee. So it's very, very important. And it must be valid and unique to the employee. You cannot share email addresses within the Cardinal system because it does present downstream impacts for the system. When you are entering in an email address for a pending email address, until the employee receives their business email address or provides you with a personal email address, you're going to want to use the generic email address that's provided to you. No other alternatives to this email address can be used, right? You can't capitalize all the letters or some of the letters. It must look the way that you see it on the screen, okay? And no other variation should be used. This is the specific email that is utilized when an employee has a pending email address or they maybe haven't provided you with an email address, because email addresses are required on the personal record. Again, we've talked about how you cannot use or share an email address within Cardinal. So therefore, employees cannot use their spouse's email address or vice versa, or you can't use your mother's email address to monitor their information. It has to be unique, and the system validates it and will not allow you to enter that email address if it's already in use. We do have an example here, so I'll go over that. We have a COVA health benefit locality employee that has personal data in Cardinal, which is very common. And let's say their spouse is a state employee. They don't work for a locality, but they work for the state. And these two employees are sharing an email address because that's typical, as husband and wives generally do, so that they stay abreast of what's going on. That's not going to be allowed. Okay, you can't use that for the personal record for both those employees. So yes, they're going to have to give you a unique email address in order for them to both be able to access Cardinal. Okay. The only email address that can be used over, the only email address that can be duplicated in Cardinal is that generic email address that we provided for you here on the screen. And this is only accepted when you're using the pending email address option, or in cases of, let's say, the employee is supposed to give you a personal email address, but they have not, or they cannot, you can also use that no email address there. Again, we just reiterate, changing that case of the email address does not make it unique or different. So please don't try it. We have updated some validation in the system to ensure that this is not allowed. So if you have not come across that already, you will receive a message that says an error message blocking you from doing that. Okay, so no need to put in a ticket. You'll get the information right there on the screen and a message that says this email is already in use. Please try another email. That's not exactly what it says, but get the gist. So we do mention some impacts of invalid or bad email addresses, right? We've talked about that. Employees can't log into Cardinal, and that information is sent over to our vendors, our third-party vendors, such as VRS and benefit vendors. So they're going to receive that bad email address, and that's going to act your ways. More about missing and pending email addresses. We do have a query that is available for you to use so that you can keep track of your employees that are missing an email address. And essentially, when I say missing an email address, they have the no email address in their as a value in their employee address field. The navigation to that specific query, again, is going to be under your query viewer, and this is the name of the specific query that you'll use, the B_HR_ missing email address. And when you run this query, it allows you to identify missing and pending email addresses so that you can correct them or add the actual email address in a timely basis. That way, the employee is not sending in tickets saying they can't access Cardinal. You want to make sure you run this query on a reoccurring basis so you can keep track of those employees, because as we know, we're going to use that email address sometimes. And make sure, again, you're not using any other variations of that generic email address. Because if you do, it's not going to show up in the query for you to monitor. Okay, that query is specifically looking for a certain variation of that generic email address. And if your employee does show up in that query results, you want to make sure you reach out to your IT department so that you can retrieve their correct email address and add that into their personal record so that they can access Cardinal in a timely manner. We do identify here at the bottom the specific job aid that is you want to reference when you are modifying your employees' email addresses if you're not familiar with how to update them in Cardinal. And after this forum, you will be sent this slide deck, so you will have access to this. This is actually a clickable link that will take you directly to this specific job aid. The next query I'm going to go over is the managing temporary SSNs. But before I go over that, let me pause and see if we have any questions about email addresses. Okay, I'm getting the shake of no, so I'll go forward. So managing temporary SSNs. There are agencies that will occasionally need to use a temporary SSN in Cardinal so that they can pay their employees until the employee receives or is assigned an SSN via Social Security agency. And The two queries that we're going to discuss that are resources for you are the VHR wage employee temporary SSN query, and then the VHR temp SSN query. The first query, the wage temporary SSN query, is going to be what you'll utilize to identify the next available SSN. And the second query, the temporary SSN query, is what you use to monitor when an employee has been provided a temporary SSN and that SSN has been entered in Cardinal. So if your new hire is a VRS member, what you want to do is request the temporary SSN from VRS because it has to come directly from VRS so that VRS and or VNAV and Cardinal remain in sync. But if not, if they are not a VRS or will not be a VRS member, then you will identify the next available temporary SSN number by utilizing that the first query at the top, the VHR wage employee temporary SSN. And that, when you receive that number, it's going to start with a 907 prefix. And that 907 prefix is what must be used for all temporary SSNs within the Cardinal system. That allows that temporary SSN to be pulled by that second query, the HR temporary SSN query. It will return that specific employee and social security number so that you can monitor it and know which employees that you have that you may need to follow up with in order to get their permanent or their assigned SSN from Social Security. Only DHRM iHelp team can change Social Security numbers within the Cardinal system. So you will want to reach out to them when that temporary or that permanent SSN comes in. And again, you want to do this in a timely basis once the Social Security number is changed. After that, you want to communicate the change to your agency payroll. And you want to look in VNAV because for your VRS retirees, if that Social Security number is coming for that type of employee, you want to check their VNAV to make sure that when that new SSN number comes in, VNAV gets updated appropriately. Your agency will need to follow up with VRS for their procedure on correcting any employee Social Security numbers that are inaccurate in VNAV. All right, reports. At a high level, we have these charts, this slide and the next slide that goes over some key reports for auditing and key queries purposes. Okay, you guys can kind of go over them in detail, but one thing I want to mention about all of these reports, you see that it provides information about who has keyed the transaction and when they keyed the transaction. Okay. So you don't have to put in a ticket to see who keyed what. You can actually go and run this report if you have access to it. The next chart is our EPR reports and queries. And this is a list of reports and queries for agencies to review and certify your monthly data. DHRM publishes the EPR monthly report based on the data that agencies enter and certify within the Cardinal system. If you have any questions that are EPR related, you should reach out to DHRM iHelp. Just know that DHRM nor Cardinal cannot provide information about how your positions are funded. If you need to know that information, you're going to have to work with your Cardinal budget processor regarding that information. All right, so Excel tips and tricks. First thing we're going to talk about is Power Query. So for those who are familiar with Power Query, I apologize. This might be a review for you. But for those that aren't, hopefully this will be helpful. We discussed merging different pieces of data. So specifically, Power Query is used when you have to run multiple queries, right? A position query and a job query, or a personal query and a job query. And you want to combine that information kind of easily so you can review it or get the information that you need out of that. So Power Query can be leveraged to do this. There's a lot of documentation about it on the Microsoft Excel website, and there's videos that tell you how to do specific things. So I encourage you to take a couple minutes to look that up. We're going to go over this. This is not the only way that you can merge data. There's tons of ways, but it's pretty quick and easy way, and hopefully it will help some of you. All right, so before we jump into the demo, we're going to go over a scenario. And this is a true scenario, something that we saw over at the post-production support team. We had a compensation analyst that needed some fields merged together from the position data. And as you see here, they pulled the position or the position query they're utilizing, but they also needed information from the job code salary query and the HR location query. So we're going to demo how you can merge these three queries into one Excel workbook. All right, so again, we have run these queries previously so that we can make sure that this information is scrubbed and there's no PII. But we've ran these queries, the job data, the position data query, the job code table query, and the location code table query. And we've added them in separate tabs on this workbook. Okay. And we've reviewed them and identified our key fields. For position data, we're going to use the job code. Then we can merge it to the job code table. And for location code, we're going to use the location code and merge that to the position and job code, the position tab, or the position data. Okay. So how is this done? Well, I'm going to actually merge this into another workbook. So I'm going to actually pull this to the side and open up a new workbook so that my results go into my new workbook. Okay. And I'm going to close out my old workbook. So to do that, you're going to actually access your data section, and you're going to select the Get Data dropdown. Because I have the data in another Excel workbook, I'm going to go to Excel workbook. And then I'll navigate in my file manager where I have this actual workbook. Give me 1 second. And I'm going to use that workbook to pull in the data. Now, because there's 3 tabs, you'll see the 3 tabs that are available. And since I want to select all of them, because I'm going to merge all 3 tabs together, I'm going to click on this checkbox, and then I'll be able to select all the tabs that I want to merge. Now, I could load from here, but I'm going to actually do a little manipulation of the data. So I'm going to select transform data. And that's going to open up a editor. And in this section, I can review the data. One thing I want to mention, sometimes when there's leading zeros for like the employee ID or the job code, those fall off because if it's not in the right format, you can change the format on the actual workbook itself, or you can actually change it in here because when you go to merge, you might get an error if you do not update the data. So let's go ahead and check our job codes. So to change the type, the format type, you'll highlight the specific column, drop down to change type. And as you can see, we have whole number, which is actually dropping zeros. So what we want to do is actually change that to text. We'll get this warning message, read it, but I know what this says, so I'm going to say yes. I'm going to replace current. And we see our zeros get batted back onto our job code. You can go through the columns and make sure your data is accurate. For this demo, I'm just going to focus on the job code because that's what we're going to use to identify or to merge the tables. Then I'll select the next query. Again, I want to look at the location code and see. I'm actually going to use the location code to be my key values. So I don't need to change anything here. Well, good. And then my position, I want to make sure my job code is accurate or in the right format. So when I go to merge, there's no issue, and it is. Okay. Another thing I want to mention on the right-hand side, the Power Query Editor will track what you've changed. So when I change the type, you see that it has applied that step. So when it goes to transform the data, it makes sure that that information is carried over and added into the workbook. All right, so now we're ready to merge. So when I want to merge, I'm going to go to Merge Queries dropdown, and I'm going to select, you can select Merge Queries or Merge as New. I'm sure they do different things, but off the top of my head, I can't think of what it is. Once you select that specific value, you'll see a merge window display. And you're going to select the table that you want to merge, the two tables that you want to merge, okay? So first, we're going to merge the position with the job code table. So I'm going to use my position data as my main table. Then I'm going to drop down and add the job code table. On this job code table, keep in mind you have all the job codes. So every agency is not going to use all of the job codes. So some of these job codes are not going to come over. And in that case, we want to make sure that the type of join that we're using is correct for this specific merge. We'll talk about that in a minute. But before we do that, I want to go and select the job code because that is the key value that we're going to use to merge these specific workbooks together. To select it, you just click on it to highlight it. And then in the second table, I'm going to select that job code. And you see we got some information down here. It lets us know that the selection matches 341 rows of 341 rows. Now, we know the job code table has all of the rows. So because we have a kind of join that is saying that it's a left outer, it's saying that all from the first, which is the position table, is going to, they're going to get all of the matching job codes from that second table, which is the job code table. So anything that's not matching is going to be dropped off this specific merge, okay? That's what that means. There's other ones here. You can read about them if you want to see what they are. But yes, we're going to do a left outer join for this specific merge. Okay. Now, when I'm ready to merge, I'm going to select OK. And then that's my first merge. Now, over to the right-hand side is where your new table is going to live. And you can open up this table and This is where you'll select the columns from the job code table that you want to add onto your position table. We have all the columns from the position table. If I wanted to remove them, I think I can do that here, but I'm going to keep them. I can right click on my mouse and select remove, but I'm going to keep them, and I'm actually going to deselect or select the columns that I'm going to keep from the job code table. And that is the description and job code. We want to make sure our job codes are matching and the description are matching, or the information from the description. Then I will select OK when I have all my columns. And now I want to merge. With this merge, I want to take all the information from the location table and merge that into this already merged table. So to do that, I'm going to, what am I going to do? Hold on.
Merge query.
Going to go back to merge queries and select merge. And we have identified, we're going to take that already merged table. We're going to add our location table to it. Okay. Again, we're going to select our key value. And give me 1 second. I'm looking for it. Here we go. Our key value is our location for our first merge, and then our second merge is going to be our location code. I mean, our second table, the location code table, is going to be location code. Okay. Again, we want to make sure we get only the matches. And so we see at the bottom, we have 341 matches of 341 rows from the first table. Okay. And when we're ready, we'll go ahead and select OK. And now we see another table has been created at the end of this list. We can expand it and we can unselect the columns and just identify the actual information we want from this table, from this merge, or the location code table, sorry. And that would be the location code as well as the location city. And description. Once we're done, we'll select OK, and we got our second merge. And now we are ready to close and load the data. Power Query is doing its job. And we have our merge. We have a couple sheets here so we can review the data. But our merge is what, the merge is the new table that we've created based on the two tables that we merged together. And at the very end, we'll see the extra columns that were added. We see that this is coming from the location code table, the location code table description, job code table, the job code. Okay. We can move these if we wanted to, right? If we wanted to review and make sure that the job codes match up, we can copy them into a new, further down so we can actually see this a little bit better. Give me a second because this is a little big. Where's the job code? Here we go. I can move this down. Oh, it's not letting me. I think I have to delete it. But anyway, you can manipulate this so you can review it a little bit better. Okay. But this is how you would merge 3 different workbooks or results from a query into one workbook so you can easily manage it, manipulate it, review your data. I'm going to pause here to see if we have any questions or anything to add. No? Okay. All right, so I'm going to put that down and jump back into our presentation. All right, another
So we're going to run out of time here a little bit. So I'm going to ask Sam to kind of breeze through this a little bit. You know, as Sam's going to point out, we have added some references in, and we recommend you do some you know, analysis in YouTube or Google to find what you're trying, you know, the functions that you're trying to use. So back to you, Sam.
Thank you. All right, so the next thing we'll go over at a high level is using Excel formulas. We've identified two formulas or two functions that you can leverage when you are trying to get information out of your Excel spreadsheets. The first one is eDate. That can be used to calculate the number of months before or after a specified date. And then we have dateIf. That can be used to calculate the number of days, months, or years between two dates. So we identified these functions because we felt that there was a need to utilize them, specifically with the years of service report. At a high level, I have listed out some, we have listed out some, you know, steps that you would go through in order to utilize this formula, and the formula itself at the bottom. It is a nested formula, which means there's two formulas with, or a formula within a formula. And this specific formula, you go to the next slide, actually what it does is takes the prior service years and the continuous state service date. It subtracts the prior service months from the continuous service date, so you can get the actual start date for the employee. And then with that new date, it's going to take that new date and get the the number of years between that date and the date that you add into the file. Okay. I used the date that I ran the file in this specific scenario. So that is the date of August 22nd. So we're subtracting, or we're finding the number of years between that new date from the continuous service date and previous service date, or previous service months, and today's date to get a total number of years of service. Okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead and see this formula in action. We have previously ran the years of service report already, just so we can modify the data and remove any personally identifying information. We also highlighted your key columns. Keep in mind today's date and total years of service are not on the original report. You're going to have to add these columns because this is where you're going to do your calculations. We're going to add the date. This could be either today's date, the date you're doing the calculation, or the end of the service year, if you know, that will help you for your needs. And then in your total years of service is where you're going to add your formula. So let's go ahead and do that. So we are going to add today's date, which is the 24th of August. And I'll bring that down to all of the cells that we're going to calculate. And then in the total years of service, I will start adding my formula. So first argument is our dated if argument, or our date diff argument. And I'll open up my parentheses. And then I'll add the second argument, which has to be nested inside the dated if argument. And that's the eDate argument. And I will open up that parentheses. Now, Excel does prompt you with the arguments that are needed for this formula. So starting off with the start date, I'm going to click on the cell to get the value added into the formula. And then I'll separate that value with a comma and then click on the cell for the next argument, which is our previous state service months. Because we're subtracting the months from the continuous service date, I'm going to add a minus to our value, and then I'll close that argument. I'll add a comma before our next argument value, which is today's date. Because remember, we're taking that new start date that is calculated by this eDate formula, and then we're going to find the difference in years between that new start date and today's date. Next, I'll add our third argument, which is how we want this formula to calculate this value. So we are going to add a Y, telling Excel we want this in years, and then close the argument. And then for purposes of making this look pretty, we'll add some text so that the values come back in years, or the total comes back in years. All right, so now we see that we have 16 years for this first employee in the top row. Now, once I've added that formula, all I really need to do is drag this down so that it copies to the additional rows below. So type it in once and then drag it down. So we see that for our employees that have previous service months, those previous service months are subtracted from the continuous state service date, giving us that new date. And we know their next milestone is 25 years, and currently they're at 23 years.
So since we're running out of time, we're going to do a quick Q&A section. So I'm going to hand this over to Jolene. But
Sam, can we go to slide 31 for people who are following along at home? We've had a lot of great questions today. If you didn't get your question answered today, we encourage you to submit a VCCC ticket with Cardinal in the subject line. We want to point out, if you go to slide 31, go down.
oh, sorry.
A couple more. A couple of resources that we have. The job aids up at the top, there's one for generating a report and one for generating a query. Those also include the steps for scheduling. So if you had not had an opportunity and your query times out and you need to schedule it, go utilize these job aids to walk through step by step on how that. Also, right below that is the link for reports catalog, which Sam showed you at the beginning. The WBT training for reporting, if you have been along this journey for the last 2 years and you took it 10 weeks before you went live, and you forgot before we even went live and you haven't gone back through it, we'd recommend for you to block out 90 minutes of your time and go back and take that full WBT reporting class. You'll get the nuts and bolts of reporting versus just snippets that you get in the job aid. The job aid is very useful. It does show you step by step, but you'll get a bigger, wider view on that WBT. And then finally, something that we recently launched to all of you are tutorial videos related to reporting and learning. These are about 5 minutes. And so it's also like the job aids, it's going to show you the step-by-step. So go listen to Cardinal Carly and learn how to generate a report or query via a tutorial video if that's how you learn best. On the next slide, slide 32, we have our favorite job aids for HR administrators, which is almost all of you. So if you're an HR administrator and you can update data in the system, you should be using these to update that information. We update these all the time, so we recommend you download the latest version and see what we've added. And then the next slide, slide 33, is a couple of our favorite Excel support items. We did link Microsoft support pages. There might be better options out there, but we can't really link to random tutorial video on YouTube, as you can imagine. But we give you the opportunity to look for that. We recommend for you maybe look at colleges and universities. And then finally, as always, if you need additional support, we want you to enter a VCCC ticket with Cardinal in the subject line. Provide as much information as possible. And don't just include Cardinal in the subject line, include a summary of what your issue is so it can help us for routing. If you know it's an HR issue, or you know it's a benefits issue or a payroll issue, include that in the subject. That will help us route it quicker to our post-production support teams. We've also referenced DHRM iHelp at the bottom for additional support. As always, we are going to package up this recording and we're going to post it out on the Cardinal Project website. Could you go to the Cardinal Project website again, Sam?
Sure.
And if you go over to the Cardinal Project website under Learning, is a wealth of information and it includes forums. Click down on forums, Sam, and it will bring up HR. Sam's lagging a little bit from mine. But if you click HR and then you'll go to all the recordings that we've done for HR. If you're a new HR admin, go to those recordings, Sam, and you're like, hey, I haven't seen this. You know, I'd skip the legislative salary increase. I think we're beyond that. The Veteran Service Credit, we have a Maintain Teleworkers forum. And then something that we did last fall. So we'll continue to add to the top. This will be listed there. We'll also send out an email. My guess is it will be late week or early next week before we get that recording out to you. We'll resend the PowerPoint slide to anybody who was invited and anybody who was in attendance. We thank you for your time and attention today, and thank you for all that you do to make Cardinal a better system of record. And we just want to encourage you to utilize these resources to go back, comb through your data, and ensure that the data that we're passing on for employees to view or to access or up to secretariats and leadership, that it is as clean as possible. There is still some cleanup that we need to continue to do, and we ask for your help on this. Thank you so much for your time today.